The conference room of Harrison Technologies felt colder than usual that morning. Maybe it was the October chill seeping through the floor-to-ceiling windows. Or maybe it was the ice in Diane's voice as she addressed the board of directors. "As you all know," she said, standing at the head of the table in her perfectly tailored suit, "Richard's passing 2 weeks ago was unexpected and tragic. However, business must continue." She paused, her red lips curving into what might have passed for a sympathetic smile. "Which is why I'm announcing some immediate changes to our leadership structure." I sat quietly, watching her performance. My father's widow certainly knew how to command a room. At 45, just 15 years my senior, Diane Harrison, formerly Peterson, looked more like a fashion magazine editor than the grieving widow of a tech company CEO. According to Richard's will, she continued, pulling out a thick document, "Control of Harrison Technologies has been left to me. All shares, voting rights, and executive decisions now fall under my authority." The board members shifted uncomfortably in their seats. They'd known my father for decades, watched me grow up in these halls, witnessed my graduation from MIT and my steady rise through the company ranks. Now they were being told that a woman who'd been married to Dad for barely 3 years was taking control. My name is Alexandra Harrison, and at 30, I'd spent my entire life preparing to lead Harrison Technologies. My father had built this company from nothing, turning his garage startup into a $500 million enterprise. He taught me everything he knew, groomed me to take over someday. At least that was the plan before Diane entered our lives. Additionally, Diane's voice cut through my thoughts. "I'll be bringing in new leadership to help guide us through this transition, starting with our new CTO, James Peterson." A tall man in his mid-30s stood up from the far end of the table, offering a practiced smile. I felt my stomach turn. James Peterson, Diane's brother. The same brother who'd been fired from 3 tech companies for ethical violations. "And Alexandra," Diane turned to me, her smile sharp as a knife, "I want to thank you for your years of service, but your position as VP of Operations will no longer be necessary." The room fell silent. I could feel everyone's eyes on me, waiting for the explosion, the outrage, the scene they probably expected. Instead, I smiled and closed my laptop. "Of course, Diane. Whatever you say." Her smile faltered slightly, thrown off by my calm acceptance. She probably expected tears or anger, something she could use to paint me as unstable, emotional, unfit for leadership. What she didn't know, what no one knew except my best friend and head of it, Marcus Chen, was that I'd been preparing for this moment for months. It started 3 months ago when Dad first got sick. The doctors called it a rapid onset of pneumonia, but something hadn't felt right. Dad had always been healthy, religious about his annual checkups. Then suddenly, after a business trip with Diane, he could barely breathe. The night before he died, he called me to his office. He was weak, barely able to stand, but insisted on showing me something. "Allie," he'd said, using my childhood nickname, "I need you to know, things aren't what they seem. Watch the security feed from last Tuesday night. The old system, not the new one Diane had installed." Those were his last coherent words to me. The next morning he was gone. It took Marcus and me 2 weeks to decrypt the backup of the old security system. Diane thought she had it completely replaced, but Dad had always believed in redundancy. The hidden camera in his office, running on a separate system, had captured everything. Now, as I packed up my office under the watchful eye of security, I thought about what I'd seen on that footage. Diane and James in Dad's office late at night, replacing his inhaler with what looked identical but clearly wasn't. Their whispered conversation about the will, about taking control, about getting rid of me. My phone buzzed. A text from Marcus. "Everything's ready. They just tried to access the main servers." I smiled, sliding my family photo into my box. Diane might have Dad's shares in his corner office, but she didn't have his technological expertise. She didn't know about the fail-safes he built into the company's systems, the ones that required specific biometric data to access the most crucial operations, data that only a Harrison could provide. "Ms. Harrison," one of the security guards said apologetically, "Mrs. Harrison wants you out of the building within the hour." I nodded, picking up my box. "No problem, Tom. Tell Diane I wish her the best of luck. She's going to need it." As I walked through the lobby of the building my father had built, I heard the first hints of chaos beginning. Phones ringing, people shouting about locked systems, servers not responding. I stepped into the elevator just as Diane's voice echoed across the floor, demanding someone fix whatever was wrong. In my car, I called Marcus. "How bad is it?" "Total lockdown," he said, trying to hide his glee. "Every major system is requiring Harrison biometric authentication. Diane's trying to override it. But Dad built this company on proprietary technology that only his family fully understands," I finished. "How long until they realize they need me?" "At this rate? Hours. They can't even access the main project files without Harrison DNA confirmation." I started my car, thinking about the video evidence safely stored in multiple secure locations, about the forensic financial audit I quietly commissioned, about the private investigators tracking every move Diane and James had made in the weeks before Dad's death. "Keep monitoring everything," I told Marcus. "Let me know when they start to panic." "Where are you going?" he asked. I pulled out of the parking garage into the bright October morning to see Dad's lawyer. "I think he'll be very interested in the video I have to show him." "And Diane?" I thought about my stepmother, probably realizing right now that taking over Harrison Technologies wouldn't be as simple as changing a will. "Diane wanted control of my father's company," I said, a small smile playing on my lips. "Let's see how she handles losing control of everything." The offices of Bradbury and Associates occupied the top floor of a sleek downtown building. Howard Bradbury had been my father's lawyer and friend for 30 years. He was also one of the few people who had never trusted Diane. "Alexandra," he said, rising from behind his massive desk as I entered. "I've been expecting you." I set my laptop on his desk, along with a USB drive. "I need you to see something, Howard. It's about the night before Dad died." For the next 20 minutes, we watched the security footage in silence. Diane and James entering Dad's office at 11:47 p.m. The inhaler switch, their whispered conversation about the modified will. "That's not all," I said, pulling up another file. "This is from 3 months ago when Dad first got sick." More footage played, showing Diane accessing Dad's private office late at night, tampering with something on his desk. The timestamp matched exactly when his mysterious illness began. Howard removed his glasses, rubbing his eyes. "Your father, he knew something wasn't right. The day before he died, he called me about changing his will back. He was supposed to come in that afternoon. But he never made it," I finished quietly. My phone buzzed. Another text from Marcus, "Systems still locked. Diane's called in 3 different tech teams. None of them can crack it." Howard was already pulling out files. "This video evidence, combined with a suspicious death, we can petition the court to freeze all assets pending investigation." "How long will that take?" "Normally, weeks. But given the circumstances and my relationship with Judge Morrison," he reached for his phone, "I might be able to get an emergency hearing this afternoon." Just then, my phone rang. Diane's name flashed on the screen. I showed it to Howard, who nodded. "Put it on speaker." "Alexandra." Diane's voice was tight with barely controlled rage. "What have you done to the company systems?" "Me?" I kept my voice innocent. "I'm not sure what you mean. I was escorted out of the building, remember?" "Don't play games," she snapped. "Nothing is working. Every major system is locked down. Even James can't access the core servers." "That sounds frustrating," I said calmly. "Have you tried using Dad's biometric access?" A pause. "You know that's not possible." "Oh right, because he's dead. Funny how that happened right after you switched his inhaler." The silence on the other end was deafening. When Diane spoke again, her voice was dangerous. "Be very careful, Alexandra. You're making accusations you can't prove." "Actually," I said, glancing at Howard, who was already on another line with the judge's office, "I can prove everything." The hidden camera in Dad's office caught it all. Another pause, longer this time. I could almost hear her mind racing, calculating odds, planning her next move. "What do you want?" she finally asked. "Meet me at the office. 1 hour. Bring James. And Diane, don't bother trying to delete anything from the servers. You can't access them, remember?" After hanging up, I turned to Howard. "Will you have something by then?" He nodded, covering his phone's mouthpiece. "Judge Morrison is clearing her schedule. She wants to see the video evidence immediately." Back at Harrison Technologies, the atmosphere was chaotic. Employees huddled in groups, whispering and watching as I walked through the lobby. News of the system lockdown had spread quickly. I found Diane and James in the main conference room. She'd been pacing, her perfect hair slightly mussed, her designer outfit showing signs of stress. "Fix this," she demanded as soon as I walked in. "Whatever you've done, undo it now." I sat down at the head of the table, her seat from this morning. "I haven't done anything. Dad built this company's security systems himself. He made sure only a Harrison could access the core technology." "I am a Harrison," she said through gritted teeth. "No," I replied softly. "You're the woman who married my father 3 years ago. The woman who tampered with his medication and switched his inhaler. The woman who thought she could steal everything he built." James stepped forward, his face dark with anger. "You're making dangerous accusations, Alexandra." "Really?" I pulled out my phone, pulling up the video. "Let's watch something interesting." Their faces changed as they watched themselves on the screen, their own words condemning them. By the time it finished, Diane had sunk into a chair, her face ashen. "It's over," I said, standing up. "The police are on their way. Judge Morrison is reviewing the evidence right now. Every account will be frozen, every asset locked down." "You can't prove that inhaler was tampered with," James said quickly. "It's circumstantial." I smiled. "Actually, I can. Dad kept the inhaler. I found it hidden in his desk, right where he said it would be. The lab results came back this morning. Interesting chemical composition." Diane stood up suddenly, grabbing her purse. "This is absurd. I'm leaving." "No," said a voice from the doorway. "You're not." Detective Sarah Chen, Marcus's sister, stood there with two uniformed officers. "Diane Peterson, James Peterson, you're under arrest for the suspected murder of Richard Harrison." As they were led away in handcuffs, I watched the empire they tried to steal crumble around them. Diane looked back once, her face a mask of hatred. "You'll regret this," she spat. "No," I said quietly. "I'll regret not seeing it sooner, not saving him sooner." The next few weeks passed in a blur of legal proceedings, police investigations, and company restructuring. The evidence against Diane and James was overwhelming. Not only did we have the video footage and a tampered inhaler, but the forensic accountants uncovered a complex scheme they'd been planning for months. They had set up shell companies prepared to siphon off Harrison Technologies' assets once they gained control. The modified will, which gave Diane everything, had been created under suspicious circumstances. Dad's signature looked shaky, different from his usual confident strokes. One morning, about a month after their arrest, I sat in Dad's office, my office now, looking through his personal effects. Marcus knocked on the door, tablet in hand. "The last of the system locks have been removed," he said, sitting down across from me. "Everything's running normally again. The board has officially reinstated you as CEO." I nodded, picking up a framed photo from Dad's desk, the two of us at my MIT graduation, both beaming at the camera. "Have you seen the latest from the investigation?" Marcus sighed. "Yeah, the toxicology reports confirmed it. They've been slowly poisoning him for months before the final inhaler switch. The pneumonia was just a cover." The knowledge hit me hard, as it did every time I thought about Dad's final months. How he must have known something was wrong but couldn't prove it. How he fought to protect the company even as his body failed him. "The preliminary hearing is tomorrow," Marcus continued gently. "Sarah says the prosecution's case is solid. They're both looking at significant prison time." I set the photo down, turning to look out at the city skyline. "Did you know Dad came to see you the week before he died?" "He told me in the hospital." Marcus straightened. "He did. He wanted to make sure the old security system was still running parallel to the new one Diane installed. Said he had a feeling we might need it." "He knew," I said quietly. "He knew what they were planning, but he couldn't stop it in time. So he left us the tools to expose them instead." The next day, I sat in a courtroom watching Diane and James enter in handcuffs. Their designer clothes had been replaced by prison jumpsuits, their confident smirks gone. Diane didn't look at me, but James shot me a glare full of hatred. The evidence presentation took hours. The prosecution laid out a meticulous case. The slow poisoning, the fabricated will, the planned corporate theft. Howard testified about Dad's final attempt to change his will back, the appointment he never made it to. When it was my turn to testify, I spoke directly to the jury, letting them see not just the CEO of a tech company, but a daughter who had lost her father to greed and betrayal. The night before he died, I told them, my voice steady. My father used his last coherent moments to make sure the truth would come out. He didn't think of himself. He thought of justice, of protecting what he'd built, of making sure they couldn't hurt anyone else. The preliminary hearing ended with both Diane and James being held without bail. Their trial was set for 3 months later, but their lawyers were already approaching the DA about plea deals. Back at Harrison Technologies, I threw myself into rebuilding what they had tried to destroy. The company had taken a hit in the stock market when the scandal broke, but our core technology and loyal client base remained strong. I promoted Marcus to CTO, a position he'd earned many times over. Together, we implemented new security measures, making sure nothing like this could ever happen again. One evening, as we worked late reviewing quarterly projections, Marcus looked up from his computer. You know what's ironic? If they had just waited, played it straight, Diane probably would have inherited a significant portion naturally. Your dad wasn't a vindictive person. No, I agreed, he wasn't. But they weren't willing to wait. They wanted everything, immediately, no matter the cost. 6 months later, I stood in the courtroom again, this time to hear the verdicts. Diane and James had both taken plea deals to avoid longer sentences. Still, they were looking at 15 years each, plus restitution. As they were led away, Diane finally looked at me. The hatred was still there, but beneath it, I saw something else. Defeat. She had lost everything. Her freedom, her reputation, the wealth she'd killed to obtain. That night, I visited Dad's grave for the first time since the funeral. The autumn air was crisp, leaves crunching under my feet as I approached the headstone. We did it, Dad, I said softly, placing fresh flowers by his name. They can't hurt anyone else now, and Harrison Technologies is stronger than ever. A week later, I called a company-wide meeting. Every employee, from top executives to maintenance staff, gathered in the main auditorium. Harrison Technologies was built on innovation, integrity, and trust, I began. My father created not just a company, but a family. Recent events tested that foundation, but we've emerged stronger. I announced a new profit-sharing program for all employees, increased benefits, and a scholarship fund in Dad's name for underprivileged students interested in technology. My father believed in building things that last, I continued. Not just technology, but relationships, trust, legacy. We lost him too soon, and in terrible circumstances, but his vision, his values, live on in every person in this room. The applause was deafening. Looking out at the sea of faces, people who had stood by the company through the scandal, who had trusted in Dad's legacy, I felt a profound sense of responsibility and pride. Later that evening, as I prepared to leave the office, I found myself looking at Dad's photo again. The same one from my MIT graduation, our smiles frozen in time. I wish you could see it now, Dad, I whispered. Everything you built, everything you protected, it's all growing stronger. And I promise, I'll keep building on your legacy. Marcus appeared in the doorway. Ready for tomorrow's board meeting? We're presenting the new security patents. I smiled, setting down the photo. Ready. Dad always said the best revenge isn't just winning, it's thriving. As we walked out together, I thought about everything that had happened. Diane and James had tried to steal not just a company, but a legacy. They had underestimated not only the security systems Dad put in place, but the loyalty he had inspired, the foundations he had built. In the end, their greed had cost them everything, while the very things they had tried to destroy, the company, its people, its values, had emerged stronger than ever. Dad's last gift hadn't just been the security camera footage. It had been the trust he placed in me, the lessons he taught me, the strength he knew I would need to protect everything he had built. Standing in the lobby of Harrison Technologies, looking at our company logo shining bright against the night sky, I felt his presence more strongly than ever. We had won not just by exposing their crimes, but by staying true to his vision, his values, his legacy. And that was the greatest victory of all.